I'm Nathan Liu, and this is my Art Matters topic. The show that I'm going to be talking about is the Vetements Fall Winter 2021 show by Garam Vasalia. So, as just a bit of background to understand the work a bit better, um, both Garam Vasalia and Demna Vasalia, who is the creative director of Balenciaga, were born in Georgia during the war in Abkhazia and the ethnic cleansing of Georgians. Russian bombs destroyed their house, and so, through the Caucasus Mountains, they fled to Tbilisi and after that, Moscow. Um, they're both now some of the leaders in two of the biggest brands in the world, and knowing this background, their really controversial and political work tends to make more sense. Um, these are some sort of notable looks from the fall winter 2021 show. I think at the time, Vetements is really known for their tongue in cheek, on the nose, sort of edgy references. Like these just sort of look a bit sarcastic and ironic to me, um, with the anarchy symbol that's flipped upside down, but it's not representing anarchy, it's to spell out a V for Vetements, you know, sort of shallow, garish, almost campy takes on politics. And this is what most of the show looked like, apart from these four looks. Um, when looking at it on sort of Vogue catalogs or even on Google Images, these four looks really do stand out because they're so much more toned down and sort of serious in tone. Whereas if I bring it back to this, it does look really out of place to me. The blue splashes on the surface may look like a sort of Pollock reference or maybe even a graffiti reference, which is what I got firsthand when I saw these looks. But as more came out about it and it started to gain more controversy and attraction, it came out that these were based on the Hong Kong protests, where police sprayed a blue dye that was laced with skin irritants and tear gas to identify people who were at these protests. I mean, the reference now looks pretty clear. Um, and it's compared to sort of these looks here, it is so much more understated. And I think in a more intentional way, these looks are really referencing something real, you know? Um, a second layer to it that I personally saw was um, these references with the trench coat, the really high necked collar to sort of power dressing and political dressing, in the sense that you would never see a normal Hong Kong citizen, even in winter, dressing like this. This is Carrie Lam, who was the governor at the time of Hong Kong, who let these protests happen. Um, and she was really criticized for, of course, people call her a traitor of Hong Kong. Um, but you can sort of see how she's sort of dressing out of place to really show herself as a symbol of power, or that she's in line with Chinese and mainland China's beliefs and laws. And this is really echoed in it. That really high necked collar, these sort of stiff, thick trench coats, um, along with the glasses. There's a sort of really corporate look to these things. It's quite sterile as well. And further on from that, um, it stood out to me that there was one black look and one white look. Um, at the time when I was living in Hong Kong and I saw some of these protests firsthand, there is a divide between which political party you stand by based on how you chose to dress. So, protesters on Hong Kong's side, which were fighting against the extradition bill, wore all black. You'd see a sea of black people. I mean, they're all wearing black here. But sort of a few months into these protests, people arriving from China would wear all white and they would batter Hong Kong civilians, whether they're participating in the protests or not. Um, and I sort of see it in these, it could be a completely simple, mindless choice, just black or white. But at the time when we were living there, I remember my dad would say, "Oh, don't wear all black because you don't want to be questioned by the police or targeted by people wearing white, but you also don't want to be wearing all white because, you don't want to align yourself with those people." So perhaps it's Guram Vasalia saying that both members are victims, or it's just a further reference to it. Um, and another layer to it, which I saw, was um, associations with anonymity and identity. Um, at the protests, people would always cover their faces to one of evade the tear gas effects, but also to avoid being tracked down on CCTV or on videos of the protests so that they wouldn't be questioned later or detained later for participating. Um, the anonymous mask became really tied into the protests. People would completely cover their faces, their eyes, their fingertips, even. Um, and it's something that is sort of more hidden as well. Like, there's one gloved hand, and then the other hand is hidden. They're wearing glasses. The collars are made so long and with the ribbed stitching so that you can literally just pull it over your face and hide everything. No skin is exposed. No fingerprints are exposed. Um, and I think it's quite a subtle nod to some of the more underlying things about the protests that aren't covered or perhaps wouldn't be known to an outsider source. Um, and speaking of this, I think it's quite important to mention that both models here are Asian models. Um, and I think that is definitely a conscious choice to harken back specifically to the protests and give a clearer message than these more out there, sort of, they don't really know what they're about type of looks. Um, and lastly, I wanted to mention the background. Um, in the actual talk when we did it, it was mentioned that these sort of look sort of theatrical, almost Bowie-esque. These sort of just really vibrant, vivid, sort of 80s type backgrounds that are painted. They're not digital. Um, and I think on first look, it sort of looks like an apocalyptic sunset or just some really beautiful clouds. But when compared to some of these images with the fire in the background, with all the smoke and the tear gas, I think it gives a more potent, more serious twist to these clouds. Perhaps they're plumes of smoke and fire. Um, so I think it's just a really genius set of hidden looks. Um, and at the time when this came out, Garam Visalia really faced a lot of controversy. A lot of people were saying, "You're not from Hong Kong, who are you to speak about these issues and sort of parodize them in a way or capitalize off of them?" But to me, knowing his and his family's background, surviving an ethnic cleansing, leaving to Moscow, and facing even more oppression there, I think they do know what it's like, and how it is to be targeted in politics. So I think these are really appropriate, genius, multi-layered looks. And yeah.